We are awaiting President Trump and the President of South Korea shortly. Well, there it is. That's the Rose Garden. Shortly, they'll step to the podiums and they will issue a joint statement. But they say they're not going to take questions. But you can bet that questions will be shouted from the audience, and we'll see if President Trump answers them. We're waiting any minute. They will appear and do that. Meanwhile, on Wall Street, the rally has faded. We were up over 100 points. Now we're up 42. 21,300 is the level. Interest rates are rising. That is hurting the market. We're now at 2.29% on the 10-year Treasury. Sounds technical, but that is a big deal in the interest rate world, and it is affecting the stock market. Joining me now, Robert Charles, former Navy intelligence officer, former Assistant Secretary of State under Colin Powell, and former White House staffer to Reagan and Bush 41. Robert, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
I'm sure you've heard a lot of talk this morning between South Korea and the United States about trade. I'm sure you've heard that South Korea's trade surplus with America has doubled in the last few years. And I'm sure you've heard that Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross wants to take care of this product by product, cars and steel. Is this all just talk, or are we really going to make a difference between trade between America and South Korea?
I think we will make a difference, and I think that candor between allies, as between friends, is always good on trade and security. So, on trade, let's be frank. There was an agreement signed in 2007, a bilateral agreement. It went into effect in 2012, and the goal of that agreement between us and South Korea was to generate a $10 billion advantage to the United States. That is to say, to increase our exports to South Korea by $10 billion. The net effect actually was to reduce our exports by $3 billion. So today we have a trade deficit between $17 and $20 billion with South Korea. In context, that means that we consume about $80 billion worth of goods and services from them, and they consume about $60 billion from us. So does the president have a bona fides reason to sit down and renegotiate that agreement? You bet he does, and he should be doing that. And then you look at the other big topic under conversation, no doubt, behind closed doors, and that's going to be security in North Korea and the relationship between South Korea, China, and North Korea. The biggest piece of that is the terminal high-altitude area defense, which is basically it's a medium-range ballistic missile defense that we would like to have them put up. Why? Basic reasons. One, we don't want to have missiles falling on South Korea because we've got a lot of equities there. We've got a lot of both blood and sweat and also financial equities there, but we've got servicemen there, and we have strong interest there. So
that's the real story.
Yeah, and then
it's a threat from North Korea, and what are we going to do about it? And will the South Koreans allow us to put up a missile defense shield in South Korea against incoming missiles? Okay, at the end of the day, Robert Charles, do you think that they're going to let us do that?
Absolutely, and I think net, they will also cross over trade and security, and the president will use security to negotiate for better basically we'll use trade to negotiate for better security advantage.
Robert Charles, look, I'm sorry to keep it short, but it's a wild day today. Lots of news. Stay there for a second. I'll get back to you, I promise. Michael Malice is with us. He's the author of, this is an interesting title, Dear Reader, the unauthorized autobiography of Kim Jong-il. Michael was our guest yesterday. Struck a chord or two, did you not, Michael?
Thank you for saying so.
Yeah, I think you did. Now, this missile shield,
yes,
America wants to install it at our expense in South Korea. The South Koreans are balking. Why?
Well, also, China is not a big fan of us introducing all sorts of weaponry into South Korea. And South Korea, there's been a big tension for decades about whether they're going to be independent or basically are they going to be our kid brother and relying on us for defense. So this has been very much a political issue with them for many years.
So what are they going to do?
Well, it depends on what their relationship is with China. It depends on how well the talks go today. The new president, President Moon, is left of center. So the papers were saying that their relationship with President Trump was not going to go well. However, by all accounts, just looking at that body language, it seemed that they really had a kind of rapport, far better than the Angela Merkel body language that you saw a few months back.
Body language. There's a difference between body language and underlying the interest of nations.
Sure.
Is it in South Korea's interest to build a missile shield, albeit the Chinese object and the Americans will pay? Is Is it in their interest to actually do it?
Well, it's in their interest to be safe against the increasing threat of nuclear attacks or traditional weapon attacks from North Korea. So any defense would probably be in their best interest. However, they have to wonder how serious is this threat from North Korea, because despite what we hear in the press, if North Korea is going to attack, they're going to hit Seoul much easier than they're going to hit Guam or Los Angeles.
Are we going to solve the North Korea problem? I mean, we have this stated goal of saying they shall not create a nuclear weapon. I think that's the stated goal.
Well, I would regard the North Korea problem as the continuing existence of the regime and the oppression of 24 million people who are living in a giant prison camp. And if we are going to see the end of the North Korean regime, this is what the beginning of the end would look like. The increasing nervousness on their part, the increasing bold actions and firing what they have left in their quiver.
Oh, you think they're spiraling down?
Yeah, Kim Jong-un killed his older brother because his older brother, Kim Jong-nam, was the only person who could succeed him under their law. So there's no, Mike Pence to take over for Kim Jong-un. Now there's no plan B. So this was an insurance policy on his part to make sure he stays in power.
Do you think it's possible that under the radar, China has a plan to get rid of Kim Jong-un, put in a general who is compliant with China?
I have no doubt that China has many contingency plans in case North Korea falls. At the very least, their big concern is what are we going to do with 24 million refugees who don't speak Chinese, who are going to cross the Tumen River and set up camp in Manchuria.
So it's in everybody's interest to get rid of Kim Jong-un.
It is in humans, not just him, it's in humanity's interest for this regime to somehow go away and to free these people who have been slaves for 70 years.
Ann Coulter is still with us, been remarkably quiet over the last 15 minutes.
Waiting for you to turn my way.
I'm just turned your way, Ann. What do you think?
At the risk of having you yell at me again, why is it in our interest? That's what, I mean, this is the Trump agenda, make America first. How does this help Americans? Yes, 24 million people are suffering horribly. I disagree with you. I think China wants to keep the regime as it is because they don't want those illegal aliens pouring in. South Korea doesn't want us to bomb the nuclear facilities because they'll they're the ones at risk. Why do we even have troops there? This is China's problem. It would be as if China announced, well, if America won't deal with Mexico, we will. Okay, oh, great. Take care of Mexico for us. Why are we taking care of North Korea for China and South Korea? We should offer to sell them a missile defense. That's it.
Okay, hold on a second. Thank you, Ann.
You're welcome. Thank you for not
Promise
yelling
never
at
to
me.
yell. Blake Berman is watching what's going on in the Rose Garden. Blake, looks to me like cabinet members are assembling at the moment. Is that right?
Getting close. You can see behind me here, I believe, Gary Cohn, Wilbur Ross, Jared Kushner, and the like top officials here at the White House. So we are getting somewhat close to the president and President Moon of South Korea here in the Rose Garden on this day. To hit on a couple topics that you were just talking about, Stuart, obviously, as we already heard from the president on this morning, we do anticipate some sort of language or at least some sort of way forward as it relates between the United States, South Korea, and just how to go about dealing with the issue of North Korea. But also, as we heard from the folks over my shoulder there just a little while ago, the issue of trade. The U.S. has a $28 billion trade deficit, at least that was the number in 2016 with South Korea. But in the comments made in the White House here just a little while ago was interesting because most of that was focused toward China and what to do about China and the trade deficit there. So you've got a lot of regional issues in that area that the president, his administration are talking about on this day. North Korea, China, as the South Korean president is here at the White House, and we believe this should be starting within a few minutes here, Stuart.
Okay, Blake, we'll be back to you very shortly. Michael Malice with me. Kim Jong-un, the leader, the dear leader, is he the dear leader?
No,
or
the
the
dear leader was the father, Kim Jong-il, and the great leader was the Kim Il-sung, the grandfather.
What is Kim Jong-un?
He's the marshal.
The marshal?
Yes.
All right. Marshal Kim Jong-un.
Yes.
He's obviously aware of American politics.
Yes.
Acutely aware.
Yes.
I'm sure he receives daily briefings on how things stand.
Of course.
He must be aware of President Trump's political difficulties. Is he trying to exploit them?
Well, I think what he's more aware of is, look, President Trump's doing a tour of all his enemies. He's sitting down with the Japanese Prime Minister Abe, then he's meeting with the Chinese president at Mar-a-Lago, and now he's meeting with the South Korean president, and all of them are saying publicly and explicitly, we're discussing the North Korean problem. So if there was someone I hated, and they're meeting with every single one of my enemies and parading them, in front of the media, that's going to make me paranoid and get into my head. So I think President Trump, just like with the tweets earlier, he's very good at playing mind games, and he's really gotten to Kim Jong-un's head, which is a great way to bring bring down the regime
Wait,
peacefully.
wait, you repeat that. You think that our president has gotten inside the head and has gotten to Marshal Kim Jong-un?
Oh, there's no question. First of all, he should be paranoid because we can, our force is so much stronger than theirs by their own admission. But if there's a bunch of people that you hated and someone is meeting with each of them individually and parading them in front of the cameras, you'd start to wonder, hey, are they conspiring against me? When you're at the top of North Korea, you have to live in constant fear of a conspiracy to take you out because, as you saw, Kim Jong-un took out his own uncle-in-law very early on in his regime. These people are murderers who kill their own.
If push came to shove, or for whatever reason, can you see Kim Jong-un launching rockets across the demilitarized zone and hitting Seoul in any circumstance?
Oh, absolutely. If they're going down, they're going down hard. One of their mythologies that when Kim Jong-il was up for the leadership post, his father said, what are we going to do if we lose? And Kim Jong-il purportedly said, if we lose, North Korea will destroy the world. And Kim Il-sung said, spoken like a true supreme commander. So that is their, like we had George Washington, the cherry tree, the basis of their mythology is that we are going to kill everyone if we go down. So this is very much part of their mentality. Plus, they're told that we started the Korean War and we've been waiting 60 years to finish the job. So everyone in the country is waiting for the so-called U.S. imperialists to come back and kill them all.
I read a report, I think it was the Wall Street Journal just the other day, suggesting that some market-oriented reforms had come to North Korea.
Correct.
Private farming plots,
Correct,
that kind of thing, a degree of trade.
Correct.
Is that accurate?
So since the 20s, when the government wasn't able to send food to people through the public distribution system, and the people who were most loyal to the regime were the first ones to starve because they thought food was coming any day, now you have this cynicism toward the governments, just like at the end of the Soviet Union, and you have private markets and black markets and bazaars. And the government has to allow them to exist because otherwise people are going to be starving even more. So basically you have to bribe the policeman. It's kind of like a tax, and you have trade that way. So they have no choice but to turn to allow a bit of capitalism into their country.
Robert Charles, weigh in on this one, please, because I'm sure you've got some experience in this area. A year from now, does Kim Jong-un still rule North Korea? Is it still the same old, same old?
You know, I think there's pressure on him like never before, and that is a direct attribution to the Trump administration. What it looks like in a year, I can't tell you, but I think deterrence, I would disagree a little bit with Ann Coulter. I think deterrence of any activity that's adverse on that peninsula is beneficial to the United States and to South Korea, economically and from a security perspective. So by way of example, I think the president probably is privately pressing the South Korean leader to knock off, stop all the cheap Chinese steel exports to the United States, and in turn, which of course helps us economically from a jobs perspective, but he's also encouraging them probably to knock that off in order to put pressure on China so that they will turn it and put pressure on North Korea. It is not in China's interest to have a war on that peninsula. It is not in our interest, and it is not in the South Korean interest, obviously. But I think net-net, you're going to see an increase in the pressure on North Korea. Where that pressure then, what kind of change that produces isn't clear, but he's clearly getting desperate. Look at the variety of things he's saying that you look at the things he's said in the last 3 months versus the things he said in the last 5 years, and you can see there is a real spike in his concern about the future. And that's a good starting point, because if China can put pressure on him, on the entire regime, it clearly leads to change. And what that change looks like is anybody's guess.
Yes, it is. Ann Coulter, big picture for a second. You just said you didn't want American troops. They shouldn't be in South Korea. Are you an isolationist to take troops away from foreign countries?
Well, I notice your guest just claimed he disagreed with me, but seems to agree with me, since all he's suggesting in deterrence is an economic deterrence of China. I'm all for that, but also agrees that it's in no one's interest to have war. It's absolutely not in China's interest to get rid of Kim Jong-un. It's absolutely not in South Korea's interest to get rid of Kim Jong-un. It's certainly not in our interest to have our troops at risk there.
You know, it's very interesting, isn't it?
Let me just,
our heated discussion has been about North Korea, Kim Jong-un, and what we're going to do about it. What you're about to see in the Rose Garden is the two presidents from South Korea and President Trump, and they're going to talk about trade.